babe. Fine, babe. Good babe. Fine, babe. And it gets your face like warmed up.
Super serious.
Where nothing fun or funny ever happens.
This is a super serious thing.
I don't even like dogs.
Super serious.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Super Serious Dog Podcast. Today, I'm joined not only by my co-host, Courtney Cuellar, but by our very own special guest, Mark Oppenheimer. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Hey, Misha. Hey, Courtney.
Nice to officially meet you, Mark.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. I've been following your stuff. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
So Mark has his own podcast and he wanted me to be on it. And I said, fuck yeah. And so I was like, guess what, bitch? You're going to be on mine. So here he is. So Mark, I think you're familiar with this process. I always like to go on with a little icebreaker question. So I'm going to just hit you with it right now. Yeah, break your ice so good. If your dog had a deep, dark secret, what would it be?
My dog had a deep... You coming in hot with these icebreakers. If my dog had a deep, dark secret... Oh, my goodness. It would have to be something to the effect of, dude, I love you, but in a pinch, I'm out.
Oh, wait, what kind
like
of dog
you would never
have?
admit it. Like if I dropped a metal bowl. I spoke like he doesn't have great nerves in that regard. I mean, he's fine with 4th of July. Like none of that bothers him, but like he's very like startly. So like if somebody broke in, I'm pretty sure he'd just be like, I'm out.
What kind of dog is he?
He is a one of those field golden retrievers, so kind of the reddish color of the goldens, a little higher drive.
Fun. Did you get him as a puppy? Was he always nervy like that, or did you get him when he was older?
Well, no. Let me tell you, because if you guys want a master class on how to pick a dog from a breeder, you guys are going to get it. So we go look on Craigslist,
ye old Craigsy list.
Yep. Oh yeah, because we were experienced. So we look on Craigslist, and this lady was selling golden retrievers, and it was kind of cool because similar to how Halloween candy is on sale after it's like past Halloween. This dog was over 8 weeks, so that was kind of being sold for a lower price. So I thought it sounded like a pretty good deal. So
that sounds like a sweet deal.
It was a sweet deal.
Also, like I refuse to take a dog younger than 8 weeks anyways. Like 8 weeks is still like, ooh, that's a little young for me. Like I don't think you should be.
No, I think like when I've talked to like Nelson and Bill and those other guys that have a little bit of experience, they're like, actually 10 weeks is actually pretty good. But for a lot of the people, like the random number is like 8 weeks, right? Like that's the number we all read about. And so it's, from what I've understood, it's not like it's the sweet number that you always want to get 8 weeks. I know you definitely don't want to get them younger. But this dog was able to stay with its mother for longer, which was good. The mother was there. I got to see the father. But like when I pulled up, the lady was like, you like the red ones? And I was like, sure. I love puppies. I thought it was going to be like Air Bud. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah. So of course, once you show up and you see golden puppies, you don't walk away without a golden puppy. That's just not how that works.
Right.
And so I obviously dominance rolled to let that puppy. No, I didn't dominance roll, but I definitely manipulated the dogs in a way to see like which one was feistier.
Yeah.
And I picked the one that I perceived to have the less feisty of the traits. Didn't turn out so good. He is an animal. I don't know if you've seen videos, but he likes to work. So that set me on my journey, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that's fun. That is exciting. We'll probably have to like delve into that some more. But real quick, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. My amazing dog training pedigree. Here it comes. So when I was in high school, first off, my mom always had dogs, but they were the type of dogs like, no, don't open the door. No. And then like the next 2 hours were just spent around the neighborhood, like searching for the dog. So like my mom always had rescues and she was lovely and she's a loving woman, but just like, dogs that are well-mannered weren't necessarily her thing. But anyway, so I'd always been around dogs. And so I took this nannying job, which is where a male becomes a nanny. And so I nannied for a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old in high school. And during their naps, I got to watch TV, and they had a pretty sweet couch, and they TiVo'd everything or whatever it was. So I got to watch all the episodes of The Dog Whisperer, and it was like my dirty little secret. Like there was something so compelling about Mr. Cecil Milan, and like I don't know what it was. Like it just scratched an itch inside of me, like for whatever reason it was. So like that resonated with me. And like, I remember that being one of the first places where I was like, dog training speaks to me and I didn't even know it. And it's silly because, it's Cesar Millan, but like, that's where it started with me. So anyways, fast forward past Manning, my wife asks me, can we get her a dog? She wasn't my wife then. We were living together. She's my girlfriend. I had said no consecutively for 3 years because I was just like, no, that's a lot of responsibility. When we get a yard, we can get one, all the things that like Grinches say to their significant others when they want dogs. And so, but I knew,
or somebody with strong boundaries and an understanding on the work it takes to have a fucking dog, or at least
Lee still blames you for not getting a puppy. So quit trying to weasel your way out of that, Misha. So no, you're right. No, I think had we gotten a dog earlier, it would have not been good. But I do find it interesting that I was the one saying no, 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 and now I'm like the dog trainer. So we ended up getting it right. Do you like your red ones? Of course, I love the red ones. They look so cute because that's what you're supposed to look for when you go to a breeder is how cute they look.
Yep.
So I go there, get the dog, and my wife's just like, yeah, she goes to the barn and she has horses and she would go on trail rides. And she would be like, how perfect would it be if I had a dog that can go on trail rides? And I was like, sure. She's like, it would be my dog, right? And it's like, yeah, cool, sure. Get your dog, take it to the barn. It's like, as long as I don't have to water it like one of your houseplants. So she starts raising it and it's all going fine. Everything's fine. Like I read the Monks of New Skeet book, so I'm an expert. So I don't need any more education on dog training because if they jump, you just hold their paws. They won't like that. Let them back down. And that is a strategy that can work. But what I realized is that like, I thought that I could just read one book and know how to train a dog. Like I thought it was just like, cool, I'll just read this book. And like, now I'm like, I know nothing about dogs and I've read lots of books and I've pursued lots of education. So it was just so naive as a new dog owner to think like, yep, read one book, I'm good. So I read The Monks of New Skeet and that was really good. I'm not dissing that book. It's a great book and those guys are great authors. But things were going like, okay. It was fine, but what happened was the dog kept bolting after deer when my wife was on horse rides. So I was like, you know what I'll do? Slap an e-collar on that son of a gun and light. No, you know what I mean? The typical stuff. Like I wasn't trying to hurt the dog, but I was just thinking, sweet, we'll put an e-collar on the dog when the dog bolts.
Yep.
Right? How simple is that? Right. So I start YouTubing how to use the e-collar. I buy a $40 one off Amazon because I ain't cheap, Misha. So hey.
Big ouch.
Got a lot of good,
I get it.
It got a lot of good reviews. So...
And it was more expensive than the $20 one.
That's true.
Hey, exactly.
You got the middle of the road.
Customers like me also bought the $25 one. So I get this shit e-collar. I put it on my dog. And my dog, first of all, in hindsight, is like so drivey that I don't think it necessarily mattered to the same degree. Like my dog, I could not find my dog's lowest working level because he was just one of those dogs that was just like, it's on level 10 and he's like, I feel nothing.
I feel nothing.
Yeah, like, and it's like one of those like, okay, at this point I'm going to guess that you feel 8 and I'm hoping that you feel 8, on the mini educator at the time. But no, anyway, so I look up Larry Crone's stuff and I start to realize I'm a little bit of a self-learner. I really enjoy learning. I don't listen to people when they, like, if I come up with the idea, it's like the best idea ever. And if somebody tells it to me, I'm like, you're an idiot. I'll figure it out on my own. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up sorry about that. I ended up looking up all of Larry's stuff because, of course, when you Google like e-collar training, it shows Larry's stuff. And I got Larry's book and I threw that old e-collar away. Actually, I kept the e-collar so that I could show my wife, like, here's why we need to spend more money on an e-collar. Like, this one feels different, I promise. Like, at the beginning, it was like, really, $200 for an e-collar? That's kind of a lot. But once you know, you can't go back. Like once you know, it's like no doy. Like it doesn't. Right. I'm not putting an e-collar on my dog, period, unless it's a good e-collar anymore. Right. Like it's no longer. But when you're new, you're just like so cheap, and you're like just wanting to fix the problem.
Yep.
So I do that, and through that journey, I start to realize like, oh, there's more that's going on here with this dog training thing. Because Larry's not just putting e-collars on dogs, and that's all he's doing. I would watch his other videos, and so Larry was a great entryway, and from Larry's stuff, it's very user-friendly for new people. I stumbled upon Dog Training Conversations with Chad and Jay.
Mm-hmm.
But nice. Like, I'm like, Jay, you just talk all the time. And Chad, you guys are just talking all the time. This is boring. And so like, I was just like, and plus I was just a dog owner. I was like, would you get to the tips and tricks for the dog owners, please? So like, I listened to them for a brief period, but when they started getting into like the dog trainer stuff and the balance versus and all that kind of like industry lingo, I would just tune out. So I eventually stopped listening to them actually. Yeah. And later would get into Michael Ellis. And I would find all of his free stuff because I'm cheap and I don't actually want to pay for training. So I found Michael Ellis's stuff. and started devouring it. And then I actually did start buying instructionals from him at that point. And Michael Ellis's videos and the Learberg stuff was like the first gateway to motivational training for me, where like it's not just like e-collaring, and it started working from motivating the dog first. So I started doing Michael's stuff, which led me to Tyler's stuff, because if you're on the same playlists in the Learberg world, Michael and Tyler are kind of like pillars there.
Yeah.
So those two people were really influential. And my dog was getting lots better. Things were going really, really well, building a relationship. And I just got hooked. It's just like the first time I did jujitsu, I went into the gym and some grown man choked me out. And I was like, yes, I'm in.
I don't know why, but I love this shit.
Yeah, it was just one of those reactions. It was just like, I don't know what it is, but it's probably like a border collie getting to herd. It's just, they don't know why, but they like it. So I liked it.
Something on.
That's me on a bike. Like the first time I rode a bike for 10 miles, I was like, people do this for 50. I would like to do that, please.
Yep.
That is not me on a bike.
Exactly. And so, no, it's absolutely like that. So that then led me to, I did come back around to the canine paradigm with Pat and Glenn. And at this point, I was developing a little bit more skills with my dog, slightly more nuance. I would still say in hindsight, I'd like look back and I'm not proud of the training, but I was progressing.
It's all a process.
Yeah. And so Pat and Glenn were a huge influence. And then since then, I devoured all their stuff. I've gone back and listened to the dog training conversations. And now I'm a Patreon of like the GRC and the canine paradigm. And then recently, the big development for me was actually acquiring like a coach. So I've gone and got different privates from various people in the industry. And that is totally awesome and worthwhile.
Yeah.
But I found somebody that I connected with. And so I'm still learning from other people. And it's not like I only have one teacher, but I do think it's important to have a little bit of guidance where somebody kind of puts their hand on your shoulder and says like, you're mine, and they claim you a little bit to that degree. And so to some of that degree, like Catherine Smith has become what I would consider like my head coach.
Yeah.
So like Catherine, Jay, and then I get influenced by Pat and Glenn very heavily, but I wouldn't say that I'm under direct information from them. I'd say I talk more
because
closely with Jay.
You don't want to spread yourself too thin, because like then you're just going to be somebody's going to say something that conflicts a little bit, or in some way is like not necessarily conflicting, but like, oh, that would be cool too. And then you're just kind of, you spread yourself too thin and you go, I'm confused, and you don't delve deep enough. Right.
Yeah. And you end up being the asshole. You can potentially be the asshole who's always going around just being a groupie to different people. And I flirted with that. That wasn't my intention, but I got a lot of I got several privates from people. And just because I didn't settle on that person, it's like, maybe that person didn't have the capacity and maybe just wasn't a fit for that moment. Like I'll tell you an example of what you just talked about that works super clearly. So like I got a private with Pat Stewart, and I love Pat and I still learn from him to this day, and all like a huge influence on me. Love him. But I was an idiot. And I was just like, hey, here's this thing that Larry does. Hey, do you do it like Larry? And he was like, there are different systems. And generally, you're going to find the most success if you plug yourself into a system versus trying to mix systems. And I'm like, but Larry does this. And he was like super patient and kind and nice about it. But like, that was the beginning of me just being like such a doe-eyed newbie that I was just so excited to be talking to like another. And so I just kind of took me on this pathway of realizing to where I'm at that like, you do need to pick a system, and it's good that you pick it for a substantial period of time.
But and also don't be like crazy about it. Don't be like a fanatic that's like, this is the only way. Like understand that there's other things out there. And if you do hit a wall, like you can go ask questions or find help elsewhere.
Or like, guess who I'm going to go to if I'm having an issue with a bully breed of my influences? I mean, I'm going to talk to them both, but I'm going to talk to Jay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would say right now, Jay and Catherine are my two biggest influences.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to talk about high level obedience and precision, I'm going to Catherine. And so it's also good to have different coaches with different strengths versus like, for example, if I was going to go see Catherine and Pat, it wouldn't super make a ton of sense because they do a lot of the same things.
Right.
Per se. So it would be easier just to go there. But Jay and Catherine are so incredibly different that it's not like, I'm benefiting from two different types of personalities. Just like one teacher is not right for every one student. Like there are some students where they're just like, F Mr. O. They call me the first time, my favorite nickname I ever got, my Oppenheimer is my last name, is when a kid called me Mr. Awfulheimer. I was so proud. And I was like, great. Why had I not heard of that? That is brilliant. And so like, as the kid was leaving, I was just like, Hey, everybody, I just want you to let you know, Mr. Awfulheimer wants you guys to have a nice weekend. Yeah, Max, I'm talking about you. And he just like flush. Anyways, that's a story.
Because you rolled with it. You totally leaned into it. And then he was like, oh, shit.
I love it. Oh, and he laughed too over time. He was like, oh my God, he knows, but I don't care. Like some kid at Discord. Anyways, I won't get into student stories, but.
Oh no, we're going to get into student stories at one point. By the way, you guys, Mark you're still a teacher now, right?
Currently, yes.
Currently. So he's a like teacher in the public system. So
8th and 9th grade algebra.
Yeah. Which is real fun. Real fun.
Everybody education.
Everybody loves it. Like every dog loves obedience.
Exactly. And the students love practicing it, just like clients love doing their homework.
Oh yeah, everybody loves doing a flip heel. Hey, let's do some polynomials. So, but really, like, I did run into the issue where I was trying to mash systems. I was like, I like this person, and I like this person, so I'll do this and this. And I guess what I was getting at is like, I think eventually you can incorporate, and I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to slowly incorporate.
Right.
You do have to dive into a system knowing that it's not the truth, but you do need to commit to go deep into that system so that if or when you retreat and kind of pull back, you can glean the things that you really thought were useful and you have some substantial understanding. Like you kind of have to really just, even if you don't understand it, if you trust the person that's teaching it, you just have to do what they say.
Right.
Like just do what they say. Because if you're asking questions the whole time, you'll never actually, you're stalling yourself so much. So it's like, do you trust your coach? Yes or no?
Yeah. You have to sink yourself into the experience. Yeah.
That's a really nice way of putting it, Courtney. Sinking yourself into the experience so that when you want to decide to do something else, if so, you can say, here's what I really liked here. And I think this would complement this.
Yep.
Yeah. And I can attest to like, because I've been doing this for a while, that I have sunk into several different like methods and sunk all the way in. Fucking drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, this, I live and breathe this. Probably to a fault at some time.
Like you weren't doing this intentionally. You're like, I'm going to dive into this for 2 months and I'm going to come back out of it.
No, I wasn't. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just living my life. So I just dove in, and then eventually life goes on and you start to pull away, but you take away bits of it and then you start to kind of create your own way of doing things that can blend ways together, but you have to know each way so in depth that you can pull from it.
And I think one of the things that, like, let's say you want to be a trainer, you're working on being a trainer, like, and if you want to be a trainer, there's something that scratched that itch, like you said, right? Yeah. But B, like, that you need to know a lot of things because you know that you're going to encounter a lot of different dogs with a lot of different problems, and not every solution is going to be right for that problem or that specific dog that may be exhibiting a very, very common problem, but all the tried and true stuff that isn't working. And so you kind of like look up and you see like these trainers who have like tons of experience, and you see them like basically do magic in front of you, right? Like this is how the client feels, right?
Yeah.
We are doing magic in front of them, and all we're doing is we're troubleshooting and we're going through all the things that have worked historically or that we know like usually work for dogs, right? And or we know kind of
absolutely
where like, a plumber, you don't pay a plumber for like all of their time. You pay them for their expertise. They know exactly which little lug nut to turn and how to turn the water off so you don't fucking ruin your house.
They spent years getting the information to solve that problem in an hour.
Right. Exactly. And so it's kind of like, it's pretty intimidating to see that either as a client or as a newer trainer and just be like, well, I have to know everything. And it's like, no. Get good at something, because it's the skill is the problem solving. The skill isn't knowing the thing that fixed the problem. It's troubleshooting. It's being frustrated and sitting with that frustration and learning how to kind of work through it mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn how to do that shit on the fly in front of somebody with an audience with their fur baby.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
You talked about something that I think is super interesting, and I've been thinking about this process as I'm not saying I'm out of it, but I am getting more clarity as I'm exiting the complete novice and moving into like the but like novice, but not so like, I mean, I'm no longer like new, but I'm not experienced. So I'm new enough to look back on some of I'm new enough to look back on my phases of training and to like be able to categorize certain chunks of time with certain training habits and watch how those have changed over time. But I did, like, people say, like, train the dog in front of you. And if I were to apply the same concepts to my jujitsu, to how I would go about learning a dog training pedagogy, my gut would tell me, and my experience in that realm would say, you should figure out one system that works on 80% of dogs.
Yep.
So I basically want to I do want to find a system that I can replicate for those happy-go-lucky 60% dogs. Like, hey, what's the problem? My dog doesn't have manners and they just are so bouncy all the time and they pick up my socks and they pull on the leash. And you're like, sweet, got a system for you.
I can help you. Yeah.
Most likely, we've developed a system that works for that.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, people don't even know how to do that. So it's like in teaching, the very first thing in public education that you have to figure out is how do you teach the 80%? Not the low 10% and not the high 10%. You have to be able to teach the masses. And after you can teach the masses, you freed up the cognitive space. You have the experience to now go like, okay, these kids that are finished here because they're so bored, I need to find a way to enrich them. These kids here that can't keep up and they're falling further and further behind, I need to figure out scaffolds to make sure they don't drown. But you can't have the cognitive capacity until you develop a system that works for the masses.
Yep.
And so people say train the dog in front of you, but as a new trainer, it's infuriating because when somebody says train the dog in front of you, they're usually experienced. And the way that you train the dog in front of you is you try all these systems and you're like, sweet, here's my main game plan. I'm sure each one of you have a general approach that matches your personality type and your experience that you pretty much can kind of, if you were blindly going to go into an environment, you would kind of have a process in your head.
Yeah.
But you've had so many, then you have that system. Shut me up if I'm talking too much. You have that system where you're going through your system and it's like, sweet, it's working. Sweet, it's working. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work and you figure out where did it not work?
Right.
And then you're like, sweet, I need to reach out to my collective network of people. I need to go learn. I need to get educated. My system's broken. This piece is bad. And then you go through and you're like, sweet. And so the next time you encounter that same dog, you have a solution. And you keep doing that system until all of the what ifs basically get addressed. So you're like, oh yeah, 2 years ago, I had a dog that ate its own poop and then ran circles 3 times and then fell asleep. Right? Like I had that dog. Here's the perfect solution for that. But I think as a new trainer, it's been really useful to figure out how to stay in my lane and figure out like, what are the dogs I actually can help? And then as I'm doing that, there's inevitably going to be a dog that doesn't fit into that system. And then I have to come up with a solution. But I wouldn't want to open that funnel to the really extreme low cases and like the high performing Malinois that like need a ton of enrichment. You know what I mean? I would stick in my zone.
That's smart.
I have 2 questions for you, but they're kind of really open-ended. So I want to tell them both to you and then ask you them individually, just so you're kind of aware. So like for you, with being a public educator for as long as you have been, right? What skills do you see transferring over as a teacher for you for like being able to teach the human? Because that's one of the problems that like people sometimes have when they get into training is like I love teaching the dogs, but I struggle to teach the human. Right. And then the other thing is like, what do you think is the most important aspect in a student, like, or skill or trait or whatever you want to call it?
In a student, not a teacher.
In a student. Yes.
Okay.
In a student. So like both halves of that, like.
Totally. Yeah. So tell me the first question. You said you'd repeat them because I'm not so good with my memory. So you said you'd repeat them. I can't remember.
So basically what is something that is transferred over and I guess to kind of mirror it to the other question is very important in terms of teaching, right? What is something that's transferred over from your public education to dog training?
Yes. Okay. So parents basically. So basically parents and clients are the same thing.
Okay.
So if I've dealt with helicopter parents, or I've dealt with negligent parents, and I've dealt with most parents. Thing is, they care a lot more about their kid than their dog. So they're even more emotionally attached, and their kid's opportunity is less. So I've gotten a lot of experience, and generally, I think the most important thing to realize is that the vast majority of parents are worried.
Yep.
And everything that they're manifesting and all their grumpiness and whatever, they may have valid complaints. I may have messed up and that's totally fine. And if I mess up, I just apologize. That's how you be an adult. But like, some people still struggle with that, but
very much so. Yes.
But, but if it's one of those things where it's like, man, you clearly having a bad day. One, I don't take anybody's stuff personal. Like if I know in my heart I'm doing a good job, I don't feel badly. I'm just like, man, this person must be really worried. Let's trouble it. So the first thing I try to do is I try to validate whatever concern that they're having. And, through that process, I generally can figure out what they need and how I can support them. So I always want to circle the conversation back around to, well, how can I best support you?
What's my role here? What can I do?
I'm hearing you say you're pretty worried about your son's grade in algebra. And I'm going to guess it's because you're worried about them being on track for graduation. And I bet you're worried about that because you know that opportunities in life go down without a high school diploma. So I'm guessing you're really just concerned that your kid's not on track to graduate. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So how can I support you to make sure that your kid passes my class in a way? So it's like I work from that. I don't need to go down that whole thing. But for me, it's really important to realize that we're in the business of helping people.
Yep.
And just there are people, and then on the other end of that, I believe dog trainers need to develop a funnel that at least helps correlate what type of clients they get with what type of clients they say they want.
Yeah, totally.
So there needs to be a qualifying process on the trainer's end for the client and an understanding of the types of clients and where they're at and if you think you can help them. So just because sometimes there's a parent that's worried and they can't identify it in themselves. And they're just like, no, you said that, whatever. Yeah. At that point, I'm just like, here's the principal's email. Bye-bye. Yeah. I can't help you. And I'm not mad about it. And so being able to determine the clients that you can help from the clients that you can't help, which is what I was saying, I stay in my lane. Being able to determine those two things is going to save you a ton of trouble right off the bat.
Yeah, I think that's really good for your mental health too, because you know your own limitations and you know where you can help somebody and where someone's just kind of essentially thwarting themselves.
Yeah, that's something I really started implementing last year, and I've really enjoyed it. And I can just see it right away, and I'm like, oh, you are a certain type of person. I'm going to refer you out. Why don't you go find a different dog trainer? They'll be happy to help you and your dog. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, it's my personal brand and how I do things. It's not even I'm not even up. It's not like, oh, well, it's more just like, I just don't think it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't a good fit. And the problem and the benefit I have is that because I still teach full time, I'm still receiving a salary, right? So I don't have to take every client. Whereas if I was a new dog trainer and it's like game on, you got to provide food for your family. At the beginning I might do that. But the problem with those is that the way I think about it is as long as every client I help refers me to somebody else, then I literally infinitely expand.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if I take on a client that is not my ideal client, they're not going to get the results and they're not going to tell their friends they got the results.
Right.
Yep.
So I want to get a client that I feel confident is going to be able to get the results that I tell them, as long as I give them good information.
Yep.
And those type of people are also the type of people that likely have friends that are similar.
Yes.
Yep. Those are the people they're going to refer me to. So I want to make sure that my infinite referral network goes in the right direction with the type of clientele I want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that can definitely be applied to people who get the shelter dog. And they're like, oh, but it looks so sad and so scared. But really in their head, what they're daydreaming about is going to the dog park with their friends and going to bars and breweries with their friends and their dog. And it's like, you really need to align those two things. I know this dog's pulling at your heartstrings, but really look at your life and say, am I okay if this dog is always like that and I can't do those things?
Yeah.
And the truth is, unfortunately, some people are, right? Or they think they'd like to think that they are. And there's nothing wrong with having that conversation with yourself before you get a dog, but you're the asshole if you have that conversation with yourself and your spouse after the fact.
Yeah.
You're the asshole.
Yeah. Or at least take responsibility and be like, wow, I really messed up here. I guess I'll go get some training.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
See if you can find a happy medium.
Right. Yes. Exactly. So on the flip side, Mark, what do you think is one of the most important skills or aspects in a student? So in a client?
Yeah, it's the same thing as dogs. I don't care how good a student is. I teach the intervention classes. I teach the kids that hate math. They hate it. They don't mind showing up
you
to my
should talk to Courtney.
But guess what? They don't hate showing up to my class. They hate math, but they don't hate showing up to my class.
Why is that?
Because I have a relationship with them.
Because
they feel
that
safe.
Relationship.
Yes. Because I make sure that they understand that their value as humans is not dependent on their performance in my class. Yeah. At least not in terms of the academics. If they're an asshole, that matters to me. And everybody cannot be an asshole. Yeah. So if you're not an asshole, you'll be good in my class. And I'm not going to judge your value as a whole.
This sounds like how I am with dogs.
Exactly. I'm not going to blame you on how.
My new training philosophy with dogs. Like, I don't give a shit how well you can sit or down, honestly. But I care that we have a relationship and you're not an asshole.
Yeah. And so what makes a perfect student first is a student that's kind, respectful, and responsible. But realistically, more than anything, it's engagement. Just like with a dog. Yeah. Do they want to work? Is there motivation? Or am I dragging and yanking and cranking this kid through obedience that we call algebraic expressions?
Or dragging this client through a bunch of obedience drills that they don't see the value in and they don't want to do, and they're not going to be motivated to do the homework.
I would be interested, why would a trainer tell a client to do something they didn't ask for help for? Like if somebody didn't tell me they wanted their dog to sit down, stay, heel, whatever, like I would never teach it.
Mm-hmm.
Because the chances of them having the groundwork required for that skill to even be taught and installed is like, it's likely not present. So I'm like, if we end up training long enough that we get to the obedience, fantastic. But you're likely going to stop causing me because you don't need the obedience. You need your dog to stop pissing on the road.
Right.
Yep.
You know?
Yep, exactly. Well, Mark, that's it for our episode today. If you guys really like hearing what Mark has to say, go over to our Patreon. We're going to keep this conversation going for a whole nother hour. But also you can check out his content. You want to plug your YouTube channel and all your stuff?
Plug yourself.
Pluggy plug. I'm going to plug myself. Okay, I can't. No, I run a podcast. It's been a little delayed recently. I've been busy, but I have some podcasts in the hopper ready to go, but it's called Connect Canine Conversations. And the goal of the show is to help owners improve their relationship by listening to conversations with other dog trainers on the internet. So that's the goal for it.
Just like us. So yeah. And it, just so you guys know, it's Connect, like you spell it CONNECT, and then the letter K and the number 9. Just FYI. So it'll make because there's like, honestly, if you search like Canine Connect, like there's a bunch of other stuff that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So make sure you spell it right and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, Mark. And we'll see you guys next time. Remember Patreon, but also if you guys have questions or if you have suggestions on people you want to see on the show or anything like that, you can also email us at superseriousdogpodcast@gmail.com. Bye.
Bye.